So I just finished reading the Death Note manga. I have the all-in-one edition, as you can see here, and I highly recommend you go check this out if you haven't already. Let's say you don't own any of the manga and you want to get into it, I recommend you get this edition because it is cheaper than buying every single individual volume one after the other. But let's say that you already own every single individual volume but you don't own this. I highly recommend that you go get it because it's a really cool collector's item to have. And unfortunately it doesn't come with any posters or memorabilia or anything like that. But this is the back, this is the spine, and this is the front. And just look how thick this book is. Like, this book is thicker than Ruby Rose, right? And it took me a little while to get through this book, but no complaints, no regrets. I really enjoyed reading it. And I just wanted to come out and give my review and talk about it a little bit because even though I know that it's 2024, so it's a bit irrelevant now talking about Death Note, believe it or not, this is my first time actually sitting down and reading and finishing the manga. I remember watching the anime when I was younger, which seems like such a long time ago now. I can't even put a place, a date, a time or an age on it. And I also remember watching the Netflix live adaptation when that came out, and disappointment is not even the right word. That is a massive understatement. And I honest to God genuinely believe that Dragon Ball Evolution was a better adaptation than the Death Note version, but that is a whole different video, different topic, not for this. The main thing I want to talk about more than anything is the one thing that I enjoyed about Death Note, and that is the psychology of the characters. Like, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the story and the concept and the plot line and all of that, and, you know, the artwork, but my favourite thing was 100% the psychology of these characters, particularly Light Yagami. Because in the beginning, he's just your normal, average high school teenage student, teenage boy, who is extremely intelligent, extremely smart, very mature, top of his class, comes from a good family. His dad holds a high position in the Japanese police force in the MPA, the National Police Agency, and Light states that he wants to work for the MPA after he leaves school when he finishes his education, but his intelligence has already been able to help him and his dad solve cases within the MPA, as it's stated early on in the book. But then, obviously, he finds the Death Note, and he is suddenly granted the ability to kill people just by knowing their names, what they look like, and writing their name down in the book. And this is where it gets interesting, because over time, slowly as the story progresses, we see him as a character and his psychology slowly go from that of a typical average high school teenage boy to that of someone who genuinely believes they're God and that they should be able to do whatever they want and that their rightful place and position is at the top of the world above everyone else and that they are superior and they should be able to kill whoever they want because they are justice, right? And I think what's interesting about this is that we can all collectively agree that crime is wrong and that criminals should be punished for their actions. However, to what extent do we go about this? Because Light Yagami also believed that. In fact, that was pretty much the whole concept and point of this story. However, the extent to which he went about it was very extreme. So where do you draw the line? What is the acceptable punishment for criminals? How do we deal with it? And that's a very moral and ethical situation and question that we deal with in the real world. And I think that's one of the things that made Death Note so popular. That and the ability to put yourself in Light's shoes. Because it's not super unrealistic, you know, like say you were out walking one day and a Death Note fell from the sky and just dropped to your feet. What would you do? Would you kill criminals? Would you make yourself rich? Would you never use it? Would you kill people you didn't like? I think that is the most interesting part of Death Note, and what makes it so popular is the ability for viewers and readers to be able to sit down and think, oh, like, what would I do if I was in that situation, if I had this notebook? Because that's all it is, right? It's just a notebook. There's no superpowers and Saiyans and different realms apart from the Shinigami realm. Like, there's nothing, like, super unrealistic apart from the notebook. But that's all it is, a notebook. So what would you do if you had one? I think that's the most interesting part of the story, is being able to sit down and ask yourself that question, putting yourself in Light's position. I also liked Al. I liked Al quite a lot, and seeing him die was probably the most difficult and upsetting part of this book for me. Particularly because when he dies, during that scene when he falls off his chair, you see him realise that Light was Kira all along and that he was correct, he wasn't wrong, he just needed more evidence and that he wasn't crazy all along, he wasn't wrong. But by then he was way too late. There was also a scene in the manga where he said that he didn't want Light to be Kira because Light was his first friend or only friend, something like that. So made it a lot more upsetting for me, because could you imagine you spend your whole life isolated and alone and feeling different from everyone, and then you finally meet someone that is on your level, I suppose, and they kill you. Like, that was really upsetting for me personally as someone that really liked Al. I really liked his character design, his quirkiness, his goofiness. He was a little bit miserable and edgy, but we'll ignore that. His intelligence, I really liked him. He was a very balanced and intelligent character. And seeing him die was very difficult for me personally. And I know that he was the favourite character of a lot of other people that like Death Note as well. Neo was pretty cool, I guess. He was intelligent, quite young, a little bit silly, I guess, but he was kind of boring to me. His personality didn't really interest me or intrigue me all that much. And I think that compared to the original L, he was quite boring. I also liked Mello, but we didn't really get to see much of him. But I liked his personality, his fashion, the whole crime syndicate thing, mafia thing he had going on. I thought that was pretty cool. The glasses, the hair, the burns, the scars, I loved it all. I thought Mello was great. But unfortunately, he died a little bit too soon, in my opinion. However, his death was not in vain. His death was so that they could actually close the Kira case and capture Light. I liked Matsuda. He was very silly, very goofy. I felt a little bit bad for him sometimes because he definitely felt like and believed that he was some form of liability to the rest of the Japanese task force aside with catching Kira. But, you know, he had some good moments, you know. He was a very entertaining character, in my opinion. Misa was very popular. Everyone loves Misa, and I can see why, because she's very attractive physically. But her personality, oh my god, she was the most annoying character in the whole series. Like, every single time she was on a page, I just got a little bit angry. Like, don't get me wrong, very attractive physically, very good fashion in my opinion, great character design, you know, in terms of the way she looks. But I honest to God think if I had to sit down in a room with her and have a conversation, I would last like 5, maybe 10 minutes and then pass out from exhaustion or just freak the fuck out, in my opinion. Ryuk was pretty cool as well. I got really annoyed at the end though. I think even though Ryuk stated in the beginning that he wasn't on L or Light's side, I think it would have been really cool to see Ryuk help out Light a little bit and have the story continue, or at least have them all die. But obviously that's not how it worked, or not how it happened. And even though we see Death Notes used even after Light dies and the world sort of goes back and forth between with Kira and without Kira, a new human uses the Death Note, but they weren't that relevant and weren't that good, and they killed themselves in the end anyway. It was really interesting seeing the psychology of these characters and watching the characters, the world, and the people change as the story went on, as it progressed. And like I said, I think that is pretty much my favourite thing about Death Note, was the psychology of these characters and why I would call it a psychological masterpiece. The artwork was pretty cool as well. It definitely isn't the greatest artwork I've ever seen in a manga, but it wasn't bad by any means of the imagination. It was very long. It was over 2,000 pages, which for me, I can handle that, but I guess to some people that might be a little bit off-putting, but I really enjoyed it. So, all in all, I mean, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about, I guess. Like, I've spoken about the characters. To me, the plotline and the storyline wasn't that interesting, I'll be honest with you. And like I said, I thought the artwork was good, but not amazing. My favourite thing about Death Note was definitely the psychology of these characters and the way their brains and minds and personalities progressed as the story went on. So, all in all, I highly recommend you go check this manga out if you haven't already, even though it's 2024. Particularly if you like crime and thrillers and stuff like that, etc., etc., and psychology. I would give it out of 10 a solid 7 to 8, in between that 7.5. We'll stick with 7.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, comment and subscribe for content in the future. And I'll see you all in the next one. This is Al, signing out.